Hello guys, welcome to another video of Azure DevOps. In this video, we are going to discuss about the common issues, common errors we get while working with Azure DevOps CI/CD pipelines. We will also see many types of error. Each type of error basically generally we get and how we can debug them and what are the steps we can take to fix those errors so that we can make our Azure DevOps pipeline efficient and we don't get those issues in future. This way you will be able to make all your pipelines production ready in one go and it will be easier for the further deployments. So let's begin the video. As you can see, like for most common issues, it's if you don't know, it's very difficult to track them and it's very difficult to fix them. So make sure you are watching this video and understand what are the issues generally you get and what are the steps you can take to troubleshoot them and fix them. Okay. First, let's discuss the common issues generally we get while working with the CI/CD pipelines in Azure DevOps. The first kind of issue is pipeline configuration errors. In this type of issues, generally you get issues with your YAML syntax. You might make mistakes with YAML indentation. If you are not correcting that, you will not be able to validate your YAML file, and your pipeline will of course fail with compilation error. Okay, in this scenario you can go ahead and just fix your YAML, validate that, and again apply the fix. Okay, in some cases if you have misconfigured triggers for build or release pipeline, then it will fail. Suppose you have some you have your code in main branch and you have trigger your pipeline, you have added one trigger for your build pipeline or release pipeline for feature branch, then it might fail, right? Because your pipeline will be deployed from feature branch, and the things like some of the dependencies or some of the script which the pipeline needs is not available in feature branch. So in this scenario your pipeline might fail. The next one is authentication and authorization problems. In this case, suppose you have created some service connection and that is not authorized. You might have used some service principal or application where they don't have sufficient permission. Suppose you want to use one service principal to create some of the resources in a particular resource group, and that service principal doesn't have permission to or some kind of contributor permission uh, for that resource group. In that scenario, your pipeline will fail with authentication issues. Okay, and insufficient permissions. Even if you are using managed identity as service connection, in this case as well, your pipeline might fail if the managed identity does not have correct permissions. Okay, even if you are using multiple other things as well, like if you are using Azure CLI, PowerShell, or shell scripting directly with your pipelines, if you have uh, tried SSH from your Azure pipeline in virtual machine, and if your service connection and your permissions are not sufficient, your pipeline might fail. So this kind of issue generally will have to take care. The next one is build failure. In this case, generally if we have missing dependency, suppose you are building one .NET code or Python code, and you have some of the dependencies specified, and those dependencies are not found while building the code, then in that case your pipeline generally fails. Same is the case with Docker, not the Docker, .NET or Node.js, whatever kind of pipelines or application you are building. If you don't have dependencies, or suppose you are using your own repository like Nexus repository or Azure artifact feed to resolve the dependencies, then in this case, make sure you have all the dependencies and packages pushed inside your artifact feed or that third party repository manager. Then only your pipeline will uh, pass, otherwise it will fail. Okay, incorrect build tools or version. Of course, if you have incorrect version and you have some different version specified in your code and that does not exist in the repository manager, your pipeline is going to fail. Okay, the next one is deployment failures. Suppose you have created some of the variable groups or environment variables where something is misconfigured. You might have given something wrong inside your variable groups or variables. Then in that case, your pipeline will fail. Okay. And in some cases, it fails with network connectivity issues as well. Suppose you are using self-hosted agent and that does not have proper network connectivity, then sometimes it might fail. Okay, it might fail to reach some of the URL, like suppose you are connecting with Azure, then it needs to be connected with management.azure.com in the backend. If connectivity is not proper, then your deployment will fail with some intermittent issues. Suppose sometime it's connecting and sometime not, then it might fail because of those issues. Okay, so generally you might get these kind of issues as well while running your deployment pipeline. The next one is timeout errors. Generally, these are some of the common ones. Timeout error is if you have some long running jobs exceeding the time limits, then your pipeline will fail. Generally, uh, time limit of generally in most of the cases, time limit is of 6 hours. So if your job is running more than 6 hours, your pipeline will fail. In some of the agents, generally timeout is 1 hour as well. If your job is running more than 1 hour, then your pipeline will fail with timeout errors. Okay, in case of slow network or dependency issues, also timeout error will come. Suppose you have some agent machine where network is slow and it is not able to connect or reach to that particular URL. In that case, you will get timeout kind of error. And if you have some dependencies on some packages and your pipeline is not able to download, maybe with some internet issues. Suppose you have some URL where you want to download the package from, and that URL is not reachable from your agent machine. Maybe some network limitations or something like that. Then in that case as well, your pipeline might fail with timeout errors. Okay. The next one is variable and secret management issues. Suppose you are using some variables and variable groups and you have incorrectly scoped them. Suppose you have one variable groups for production and uh, by mistake you have just added the scope for that variable group as development environment or release environment. Then in this scenario, if you have not a specified variables particularly for some environment, suppose QA environment, then a release scoped variables will be applicable and that will fail your pipeline or it will deploy I mean incorrect resources in your QA environment. Okay, so you have to make sure that you are adding correctly scoped variables. Okay, if you have something like you are using secrets and that are exposed in pipeline logs. That is also not the good thing. So make sure you are not exposing your secrets directly in pipeline logs, and you are using key vaults and or variable groups secret in your pipelines. Okay, the next one is resource locking. Suppose multiple deployments are using shared resources, then in this case your pipeline might fail as well. I'll give one example. Suppose you have one self-hosted agent and you schedule 50 jobs at a time, then all 50 jobs won't be able to run inside your agent machine, right? So everything, all the jobs will be in waiting state until the first job is complete, and they will be queued. Once first is complete, second will run. Once second is complete, third will run, and this will go ahead till all the 50 jobs are completed. Okay, the next one is agent issues, where you get issues related to agents. Suppose you have some requirement of some tools like Python or maybe Azure CLI, and that does not exist inside your agent machine. Your pipeline is going to fail. So make sure all the dependencies are already installed inside your agent machine before you run the pipeline to avoid any issues. And in some of the cases, if you are using hosted agents and that is not meeting your requirement, then also your pipeline will fail. So in this case, you can always use self-hosted agents for your requirement. You can install whatever tools you need inside your self-hosted agents and you can use them inside your pipeline. Okay, now we have seen the problems, but we need to see the debug issues, how to debug them as well, right? So the first one is to examine logs. Make sure you are checking all the logs, reviewing build and release logs, and to get logs properly, you can enable this verbose logging with this variable system.debug is equal to true. If you have added this parameter or variable inside your pipeline will log everything inside your pipeline logs. Okay, so this will help you debug any issues while running the pipeline and working with Azure DevOps pipeline. Next is validate pipeline configuration. Check all the YAML syntaxes properly and triggers, and make sure you are validating that YAML either with some online YAML validator or even in Azure DevOps pipeline, which you get to validate your YAML file before pushing them to repository. Make sure you are validating them. You can test your script or whatever you have locally, and if you are getting any issues inside your local, you can fix them first, then you can push them to the repository. Basically you can replicate the issue on your local machine, first fix that issue inside your local machine, and then just push that fixes inside your repository so that your pipeline will run smoothly. Okay, make sure you are checking all the service connections, you are verifying all the credentials, all the permissions for your service connection, for your managed identity, or whatever you are creating for your pipelines to connect with some external service like Azure, Microsoft Azure, SonarQube, Nexus IQ, or any other external tool. So make sure all the permissions, all the connections are correct, uh, and this way you will be able to avoid this kind of authentication issues. Okay, make sure you are inspecting variables and secret, check values and scope correctly. that all the values are correct based on the environment, and scope is also correct. Suppose if this variable group or variable is related to your development environment, make sure the scope is set as dev. Otherwise a misconfiguration will happen and you will run into the issues. Make sure you use Azure Key Vault for secure storage or variable groups library, you can say, for secret, or you can say the uh, more to secure more the pipelines. Okay, the next one is enable diagnostic tools. Make sure you are using Azure Monitor and Application Insights to diagnose the errors. Isolate the problem. Suppose you have multiple tasks. Suppose you have 50 tasks inside your pipeline and you are running into issues. So make sure you are disabling some of the non-essential tasks and rerun the pipelines so that it will be very easy to you to understand which task is giving you the error, and this way you'll be able to fix them easily. Okay, next is validate agent configurations. Make sure your agent is meeting the requirement. If you have self-hosted agent pool, you can install all the tools whatever you need. If you have even Microsoft hosted or even the self-hosted agent pools, you can also add the demands inside your Azure DevOps pipeline so that your pipeline will only schedule the job whenever that demands met. Okay, and this way you'll be able to minimize your pipeline errors related to agent requirements or agent kind of issues. Okay, leverage build artifact. Make sure you are checking the artifacts if they are built correctly. Suppose you built one .NET application. Once you have built and published the artifact, make sure you are checking those, like these are built correctly, all the DLL files are present or present there or not. Okay, before deploying that to your real environment, so that you won't get many type of issues. If your code is not built properly, of course your application is not going to run. So make sure that is built properly and stored correctly inside some of the artifact repositories. Okay, now let's discuss about some of the best practices which you can follow to prevent these kind of issues. The first is use templates. Make sure you are creating reusable YAML templates for consistency. You can create one template at once, and you can use the same template in multiple pipelines. You just supply the variables and you use the same template. This way you will be able to minimize your pipeline errors. Even if you are not using this template and you are just copy pasting same thing again and again in each pipeline, that is also not the good practice, and that is also the error prone. Okay, the next one is automate testing. Make sure you are automating all the testing, integrated testing, integration and load testing, and every unit testing as well. So make sure you are integrating all the testing, automation testing inside your pipelines so that your application will be tested and your pipeline will not fail related to anything like testing. You can monitor your pipeline. You can set up the notifications for failure so that whenever any issue is occurred, you will be notified and you can fix the issues. You can also add retry steps inside your pipeline. Suppose sometimes pipeline fail because of some intermittent issues or network issues or maybe any random kind of issues which you don't know, and retry can help. Then you can also add retry steps inside your pipeline so that if your pipeline failed once, it will go ahead and retry automatically. You can maybe configure to retry for 2 to 3 times. Even in those retries if fail, then you can, of course, your pipeline is going to fail. So retry is also the good option to minimize the intermittent issues. Okay, make sure you are regularly updating your tools, whatever whatever dependencies you are using inside your project to build, or even the build agents like Microsoft hosted or self-hosted agent pools. Make sure you are adding all the softwares and dependencies so that those are updated and it is not going to be fail in future. You can use scanning tools like Nexus IQ to scan those dependencies inside your project and make sure you are updated so that you don't get surprises in production or in production pipelines. Okay, the last one is to document your pipeline so that you get clear documentation for debugging, or if you have, or if you get some issues, or if you just run into the same issues in future, you can refer that and you can fix those issues without any uh, delay or without any issues. Okay, so we discussed all the steps, we discussed the common types of error generally we get. We also discussed how we can debug them, how we can fix them, and we also have discussed some of the best practices which you can follow to debug your Azure DevOps pipelines and to ensure you are running your deployment smoothly. Okay, that's it from this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe my channel. If you have any feedback, comments or suggestions, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.